Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining this TDL webinar on cybersecurity trends in 2026. It's the middle of December, deepest Scotland, it's darkened. The feeling of a new year is almost upon us. So this is a very appropriate discussion for this afternoon or this morning or this evening, wherever you are. We have a great panel, and to moderate us, we have Claire Bishop, one of TDL's strategic advisors. So this session will be recorded and a short report will be made available in a few days' time. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Claire. Claire.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you for hosting us. It's my pleasure to moderate this distinguished panel. As David pointed out, it is our last weekly event of the year. The holidays are almost upon us, as is 2026. A lot of reports are always published in the last quarter of the year about what to expect from the point of view of cybersecurity in 2026 in this case, or the next year in general. Usually these reports agree on the general trends. When I looked at a number of reports in preparation for this session, I could see that they all promised the same things: more intense identity theft and related activities assisted by artificial intelligence, more automated attacks with the help of artificial intelligence, ransomware, new stage of this, social engineering going to another stage, geopolitical events influencing cybersecurity, supply chain, and third-party malicious activities, and so on and so forth. But I think today we are going to hear a lot more details, a lot more interesting thoughts on what is to come in 2026, how it will be different or similar to this year that has almost ended. I am privileged to have distinguished panelists today joining this panel. We have Jyotin Gambhir, who is Managing Director of Secure Flow. We have Ashish Kindu, who is Head of Cybersecurity Research at Cisco Research. And finally, we have Raj Samani, who is the Senior Vice President and Chief Scientist of Rapid7. With this, I would like to open it for the introductory statements. What do you think is special that's coming up on us the next year? Why do you expect it? What is new that you observe in your specific area of interest? Jyotin, could you please start?
Sure. Claire, thank you. I appreciate the fact that on this panel, and thank you everyone for participating, listening. Please feel free to ask any questions. So from our perspective, from what we've seen in 25, it's been the areas that we see coming in 26 as such are on the OT and IoT security side. There's definitely a need and a shortage. AI governance is another piece of the pie, which we see as a focus for 26, as well as API level security. And I can explain what that means, but essentially it is to manage APIs as an identity as opposed to as a service account. But overall, API security, IoT, and OT security, where their tools are less, and AI governance. those are the areas that we see. And of course, one of the big trends is the shortage of talent across global cybersecurity. There's just not enough people who know both cybersecurity and AI as such at the moment. So that's what we see.
Uh, Thank you very much. The lack of talent in cybersecurity is represented in a variety of ways. For instance, I hear that there is a dearth of specialists in some areas, while some other areas, for instance, process-oriented, are well supplied with talent. What do you see from where you are positioned?
So, in terms of talent, from what we see prospectively is in the enterprise space, which is enterprise public companies, because they're willing to pay, there is a pool of talent, especially around network security, identity management, and in fact, pen testing and ethical hacking. We see a lot more globally now, a lot of companies going in that direction. On the CISO front, on the digital security front, on the governance front, risk and compliance, there is still a shortage, and especially for the SMB market. The medium and small businesses are suffering because of the fact that they cannot pay that fee that the big firms are able to, and they just don't have enough people willing to work in those markets to help them. And they are the ones suffering more so in terms of cybersecurity threats. And then, of course, there are certain industries. We see healthcare as one where it's a target where there is definitely much more activity. And we are going to see more in the cloud and like I said, IoT, OT. So IoT, OT, there's not that much security in terms of tools or talent. That's an area there's a shortage.
Um, Thank you very much. It's impossible to disagree with this, especially for the area of OT. What do you think can be done to mitigate the dearth of tools for instance, the OT attacks and recognize them earlier?
Are you asking me again?
Yes.
So in regards to OT and IoT attacks, those are the attacks which now we are seeing, especially in Europe, in the airport sector, in the aviation market. We see a lot in the water supply because they are also dedicated by and working with skilled hackers. The areas where we see a lot, and there's self-driving coming in, which is also IoT sector sensors. The things where we see a lot more there in terms of tools that are developing today are around the monitoring of risk, threat monitoring, threat management, also on the identity side. So each of the devices can be managed as an individual. So those device management, asset management of IoT and OT side is a big risk. The protocols that they use are not standardized. And so there are risks around those protocols and how the data is transmitted, both encrypted or otherwise. It should be always encrypted, but it is, and especially in healthcare, we see that. But water treatment plants, nuclear facilities, airports, those are areas of risk because they just have too many physical activities that are working with old software, which is not well patched, as well as has a lot more vulnerabilities. It's just not the diligence that is in the software space has not been, or in the IT space has not been in the IoT and the OT space. And so we see a lot more risk in that space now.
Thank you very much, Jyotin. That's an excellent introduction. Ashish, what do you see in your area for 2026?
Hello everyone, hi Clary, and It's good to be part of this webinar. I think one of the key challenges that we are seeing over all these years is automated attacks. And why do automated attacks work? That starts from scams and as well as spams to phishing attacks, then going to the across the computing stack as well as across the breadth of the networks. The attack surface is increased primarily because of the way we have our assumptions and threat models in place. Second of all, with the advent of AI, especially with large language models and agentic AI, the automation has significantly gone up. And at Cisco, we look at that very carefully with respect to our at Outshaped by Cisco when we're looking into different attack paths and especially attack graph based analysis. And we look at our agentic AI, how agentic AI is going to help. Now, in 2026, we have to be very careful about the asymmetric nature of attack versus defense, right? It is always easy to carry out an attack, and that pays the attackers more handsomely than the defenders. And therefore, with AI, what we have seen in our research at Cisco Research and at Cisco is that uh, it is easier to generate malware. It is easier to carry out, generate deepfakes. Easier to deploy multi-agent automated agents, especially using multi-agent technology. It is also easier to generate code, exploiting vulnerabilities nowadays, and how we can piece them together. Um, so recently, one of our work won the best paper award on LLM based malware generation and malware transformation that can evade existing sandboxing tools. And that was a collaboration between Cisco Research, Outshaped by Cisco, and Purdue University. And that research analyze a number of sandboxes, and also detection engines, and we found that LLM based transformation does not really get detected so easily. There is just one piece of uh, the puzzle, right? One piece of the work, but going forward, the challenges, one is how do you do threat modeling for AI based systems. Your crown jewels are not only your databases, your multi-tier architectures, your cloud systems, etc. They are now AI based systems. So intelligence is a crown jewel. Whether they're in models, they are in your entire AI governance pipeline, AI ops mechanisms, whether they're deployed when you are training them. So therefore, that brings in the concept of data. Essentially, adversarial attacks will be coming in later. They're already here, but I think more or less about data poisoning, backdoor attacks. We have been doing a lot of work over last several years on these in these areas, me and my other colleagues. So with that, the assumptions also have to change how attack amplification works. Agents are going to amplify a certain vulnerability and the risks. Okay, so that amplification, how do you address that? The last point I'd like to bring out here is that, so threat modeling, what are your assumptions, and what are your crown jewels. They are not anymore data driven. They are not anymore crown jewel driven. They are more intelligence and data driven. So the last point I'd like to bring in is that post quantum cryptography. As you have seen, with more and more innovation in the areas of error correcting quantum computing, the error correction is getting better and better. There are quantum networks from Cisco Research and Outshift on how they can be used. So therefore, CRQC, cryptanalytically relevant quantum computer, perhaps will be sooner than it was expected. Perhaps, I want to, with that also the challenges of HNDL, harvest now decrypt later, and also CRQC threats are becoming strong, becoming more and more real. So how do you migrate from quantum unsafe cryptography to quantum safe cryptography, with niched PQC standards or other standards? That is going to become an important major concern. So it's like AI migration, defense from AI, and also cryptography migration. It's going to be quite a year in 2026.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I agree. It's going to be quite a year in 2026, and it's clear that automation will continue to play a significant role both for the attackers and the defenders, and that pre-quantum data harvesting is going to continue to be a significant issue in anticipation of the ability to decrypt the encrypted data that was harvested. Very interesting. Thank you very much. Raj, you have worked in so many areas. What is your view on what will become especially important in 2026 and why?
Well, thank you, Claire. I think let's have a look at 2025. When we started to consider some of the biggest threats that we would have anticipated, we had made the assumption that the threat actors were going to get better. In 2023, you had access to a zero-day vulnerability by a ransomware group that only months earlier were guessing passwords. Now, all of a sudden, they have access to a zero-day. And actually, that trend kind of continued from 2023, 2024, and 2025. And like the reason that they had access to these 0 days was because we as a society were paying criminals. Even though we've done everything we can to say, don't pay, don't fund crime. Well, guess what happens when you fund crime? They go out now and purchase more 0 days. And we saw this with the Black Bastard communications. This is a threat group that were going out and buying 0 days on the exploit market. And the challenge we had with that was it was the democratization of said tools. And so whereas historically APT groups would have these exploits and they would kind of guard them really closely and they'd try to avoid detection, now they don't really care. They'll make them available to all of their affiliates in their criminal ecosystem and they'd go out and carry out these attacks. And of course, what that kind of leads us to is this kind of blurring of geopolitical lines. I mean, we are in the middle of multiple conflicts across the globe, and the same tools that are being used by what I would regard as APT groups are now being in the hands of organized crime. But they're not two distinct groups. They, in many cases, kind of merge and blur the lines. So the obvious thing for us, and hearing my colleagues kind of talk about what to expect in 2026 is the assumption that threat groups are going to be more capable, threat groups are going to be more sophisticated, and the type of defenses we need are going to need to be more advanced and more capable than ever. And there is an element of truth to that, but we haven't really addressed what I would regard as the elephant in the room, which is look at the biggest attacks of 2025, and they weren't highly capable, very sophisticated, or very capable threat groups. They were fragmented groups of criminals that were going out and making phone calls to people to try to disable their multi-factor authentication. The impact and implication of that was we've seen literally billions of pounds being impacted because they made a phone call to someone and they managed to trick themselves in, or they managed to get the IT manager to disable X, and so what I would say is that, like, yes, we can talk about all of these latest capabilities, but let's not lose sight of the fact that threat groups don't need the most advanced capabilities. They don't need the most advanced tools in the world. What they need is, and this is ultimately, we'll get into a discussion about AI, but in most cases, if you can just make a telephone call and break into a company, then adversarial machine learning is not really required, right? So these are some of the challenges I think we have to kind of acknowledge and appreciate, that just because we've got the technology, sometimes threat actors and criminals will just basically find the shortest path to success. And we've seen this year that it does work.
Thank you. And what you said is a profound component of cybersecurity threats. While there are sophisticated attacks that are successful, especially when nation states are involved, but not exclusively, it is also true that the majority of the largest data breaches are done, as you described, through low-tech approach, through insider compromise, through phishing, through unauthorized physical access, and so on. This is something that people frequently forget when they talk exclusively about AI. So what do you think would the defenders do in this high-tech era to protect against low-tech unauthorized access and low-tech attacks?
Well, I mean, it's a complicated answer because, if you think about, actually, we talk about it, we make the assumption that APT groups have the most capable tools. They have access to some of them, but actually they don't need to use them. And so, one of the major APT groups, they've actually got a unit dedicated towards the targeting of senior executives or executives using the social media profiles of said executives. And so, is that a technology answer? I mean, to an extent, but in many cases, if you're a IT manager or a chief information security officer, your attack surface now all of a sudden is including an area that you have no control and visibility of. So, like, I manage my own social media, for example. So, but I'm using my device, which is connected to the network, in order to be able to access said platform. So like, in that particular question, it starts to become an issue around governance. And so, is it possible for the IT teams to be able to have oversight over social media profiles? Well, the answer is no. So it's not well, okay, here's a technology fix for that. In many cases, it becomes, how do I train the people to spot for these things? How do I develop a process? Are we doing things like deploying decoy VIP profiles on social media to determine if my execs are being targeted? Do I analyze and assess the attack surface of individuals as opposed to organizations? And so it's a multifaceted answer, but the one thing is really very clear today, that our attack surfaces are broader and wider than ever. And the most critical thing organizations need to do is to contextualize the alerts and the intelligence they have to be more actionable. In other words, let me gather information, let me gather intelligence, but intelligence is useless unless it's contextual. And then let me make decisions based upon that.
Thank you. And to add an experience, or a typical experience on my side, there are also roundabout ways to access executives that could seriously compromise systems if their accounts are breached. For instance, yesterday, one of the nonprofits where I am on the board, everyone received a message asking how to make a donation from an organization that is a well-qualified, well-known foundation. There was one letter changed in the domain name that probably most executives on the board would not notice, I don't know what would have happened if something like that was not promptly caught by the tools available in the management system. But there are a lot of ways, very easy technologically, to access high-profile accounts and try to compromise organizations where they operate. Uh, it's an excellent introduction about what you think at the high level we need to expect in 2026, a combination of high tech and low tech attacks and increasing automation, OT attacks, uh, identity manipulation using both traditional means like the telephone or email and sophisticated AI-assisted methods and so on and so forth. But if you look at the area where you operate, what do you think will be the most important trend in that specific area? How do you view it? Geotin, what do you think?
So, I listened to the panel in terms of Raj and Ash Khandu in their perspective. And, what comes to mind is the fact that security is very broad and you can use very simple methods to get across. And for the attacker, out of the 100, they only have to be good once and they can get through. Whereas somebody who's defending has to be good 100 out of 100 in terms of making sure all attacks don't get through in your network. Now, the network has become so broad after COVID that it's a hybrid network. It became desktop, laptop. Now it's your browser. So you're managing your browser because you're doing everything SaaS-based. A lot of services are SaaS-based. And what I feel is we need more in regards to, from an executive perspective, a better training mechanism internally to be aware of, like you mentioned, Claire, on, once somebody changes the domain name and requests a response, whether it's to raise funds or to get a donation, etc. There is the overall perspective of response, incident response, and business continuity have become also very important now because you cannot protect yourself 100% of the time. You're going to have these breaches that occur. And so you need to know exactly how you're going to respond, how fast can you respond, and do you have the capability and the ability to inform your customers, your employees, your vendors, as and when some breach takes place so that business as usual continues, and that you can reduce any loss from a business perspective. So I think those areas are equally as important as the protection of and looking at the bits and bytes on the AI LLMs and the agentic AI and the capability out there. The other thing that we're seeing a lot of is, like we were concerned about social media, now everybody's using ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot. They're putting in a lot of sensitive data into those LLMs without realizing that that data is on the internet and it is becoming public information because they're training those LLMs based on that data. And a lot of that data can be sensitive data. So healthcare data is going in there. They're trying to produce reports. They're putting in a lot of information, not realizing that that's the internet. And these LLMs are actually making that public. So there is a whole new area of threat around there as well. When you do not have governance and a standard and a policy on what to use and when and how. So there are so many aspects to this, and that's why security is a very interesting field in that regards. When AI, LLM, quantum, all these new areas come into play, you're dealing with the same vectors, the identities, the access points, the network security, but you're dealing with them in a way that the attackers are using a different capability, and you then have to protect yourself from an overall strategic perspective. That's why compliance, in a way, does help. And understanding your risk, which is very different from the next business or the other business that you're dealing with, is very important, because security is based on business use cases. It's not based on one size fits all. So it is important to kind of understand what are your risk factors, what are your threat vectors, and then work around those, as opposed to doing what everybody else in the industry might be doing, because that might not be the area that you need to attack or defend against. That's my perspective.
Thank you very much. And a ton of information in your answer. Let me probe on some of it. Last week, we had a webinar that was dedicated to the human aspects of cybersecurity, something that has come up quite frequently today as well. One of the comments made there was that the currently available training is helpful, but not sufficient to really ensure that the employees, for instance, or consumer end users adapt to new attacks. That's especially true for organizational training. What do you think, Ashish? Do you think we can improve training in some way? Do you think it is sufficient, at least in high-tech areas? What is your view?
Okay, yeah, that's a very important point. Awareness and training, and there's a whole pyramid of how you achieve that in your organization. I think I agree with Raj and Jatin's points. One of the key important area is how how AI is driving uh, all the both the attacks and defense sides, right? As well as so in that context, can we our current users, your customers, and organization customers or users, they're of their services, the employees of that organization and the executives of this organization, all three, if you look at that, those different personas, are they really aware of how different threats are coming in? That awareness has to be brought in with new new training material, but training material has to be more useful. It cannot go for 2 hours or 3 hours. Okay, that's not the human mind has certain limits of knowledge assimilation and for certain period of time, right? So not everyone has should be subjected to all that level, so therefore it has to be adapted to different types of personas, number one. Number two is that how your what are your assets that you should protect. An individual has certain roles, and that role has privileges to be able to access, update, or or even take decisions upon certain assets. Okay, and therefore the awareness also has to be updated or carried out the training appropriately. The third point is we have to bring in how agentic AI is going to update that. So, for example, identity of agents, right? Are they going to assume identity of human beings in an authorized manner or in an unauthorized manner? That is leading to maybe identity theft. Okay, are agents going to now that understanding, okay, and identifying whether it is a human being posing as XYZ or it is an agent which is posing an XYZ, and is that agent authorized by XYZ to pose on that behalf? That has to be determined. How do you determine that? Are CAPTCHAs the answer, or CAPTCHAs are being solved by AI agents? How do you address that? That's just, if you look at the depth of the problem in one very simple aspect. So training has to start adapting with respect to that and education material. The next point is about, as I mentioned, we've been looking into also access control. What agents on you? Suppose I deploy certain agents on my behalf, you know, to take a look at my emails, even respond to them, or even send invitations, or do certain things, carry out certain actions in my within my role. Then how do you ensure the trust level and access control level of that? So that's why the something called TBAC, the task-based access control model, that has come out from Internet of Agents work agency of Cisco, and that's an exciting model, and we have to look at how that can be deployed. The one point I'd like to also bring out: education and training about cryptography. Okay, that PQC or quantum threats to cryptography is not a problem. That is, I think, a good percentage of CISOs and security engineers are not even aware of what the problem is. How, when they should wake up to the problem. Okay, so one hand there is AI, and how to enable AI to and authorize AI to work on your behalf. At the same time, how to defend yourself from AI, okay, and how to protect your AI assets, okay, data and AI assets. I'm not going to existing problem on this is on top of existing problems, ransomware and existing ground jewels. Then there is also, then on the other side, there is cryptography. How are you going to determine what is your C bomb? Okay, what cryptography protocols, algorithms are vulnerable? What is HNDL? You have to train not only executives but also security engineers and individuals who think there's a harvest now defibrillator going on. Okay, and how we should start preparing for that. Of course, I think the PQC work that we have been doing is covering a lot of work from Outship, similarly agents work. But I feel that the industry has to wake up for both of these problems, and that is where training, awareness, not only for organizations but also across the academic education level has to be propped up.
Thank you very much. What an excellent answer. It is true that there has to be awareness of the importance of the new problems as opposed to the visibility of popular problems. I hear from everyone that there is a significant competition for resources between AI deployment and the funds being moved from one to the other, because AI is the most popular technology today. PQC is under a mandate, but appears to many organizations to be less important. And of course, training everyone from the executives to developers to managers to employees in an organization about what is truly important, what could affect them directly, is essential. Something was mentioned earlier, is something that resonated with me. It is the ability of LLMs to include confidential information, sometimes inadvertently, sometimes semi-deliberately, sometimes not recognizing that it is confidential information. The other problem is that non-confidential information coming from several sources, similarly to the privacy problem, as that was identified almost 40 years ago, can reveal confidential information by aggregating the answers available. How do you think we can combat this issue, and how important it is? Raj, what do you think?
Sorry, do you mind just rephrasing the question? I'm not sure I got the question.
The question is the confidential information in LLMs that could constitute the foundations for various security attacks that is either directly available from LLMs or available by aggregation different sources that are included there. How important it is, what can we do?
I mean, how do we protect information being used for training sets within AI and so forth? I don't think we need to reinvent necessarily. I don't think we necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. We've had, well, going back like to the Roman times, right? If you remember, like the construct of things like Caesar ciphers in order to be able to preserve and protect the confidentiality of information. So I don't think we need to tear up the rule book and say, oh, okay, well, this is something completely net new. I think it was a comment that I think perhaps like Ash had kind of mentioned earlier, which is like, developing and defining the governance with regards to how we develop, our AI models has to be the basis by which we do anything. And so again, like I don't think this is necessarily a net new problem, but it is a net new application of an existing issue that we've for what 2000 years been trying to kind of wrestle with. So yeah, effectively good data governance begins with good data governance.
So you think data governance can resolve it? It's a legitimate point of view. Another
No, I think it's
question.
the foundation. Sorry, Claire. So I think it's the foundation of, and then you would determine determine the controls and mitigation that you would use in order to be able to preserve and protect that said information. So I think it becomes the foundation. I mean, like it's for anything in information security. Like we've been talking a lot about. I think the crown jewels, for example. Well, knowing what the crown jewels are begins with things like good, strong data governance. And so it does begin, the foundation of any strong security programs begins with understanding what you have. So,
thank you. Jyotin, what would you like to add?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Raj around the data governance, and everything starts from a strategy perspective, understanding what kind of data you're dealing with. But outside of that, I would say that DLP, which is on the data leakage prevention, which we've been traditionally focused from the network perspective on protecting our servers and our devices to look at data leaving the network, which has sensitive files, sensitive healthcare, PII, other information, now has become an area where we are looking at it from these LLM models where we are using ChatGPT and others for tasks around marketing, finance, developing reports, daily functions. And so you almost need DLP on a browser level to understand where the data is being moved, how it's being used on each and individual browser on your desktop, as opposed to just on the network level. Because a lot of work now is done in your browser, as I had said before. It is also done on your laptop, and not necessarily that everything is on the server end. So we, as I think Ashish pointed out earlier, our attack surface is just much broader. So there is just more to protect. And so because of endpoint protection has become as much an important aspect as your internal network, which is your cloud or your data center, your firewalls and IDS, IPS devices that you have. So I think that is an area that we need to look at. And when you look at AI governance, whether you look at EU AI Act or you look at the California AI Act, which is a subset of three other different regulations that are out there, as well as ISO 42001, you see that they are starting to talk about ethical AI. And ethical AI is not only the use of AI, using it ethically, but also looking at how to use your overall governance to protect your internal jewels, which is your data.
Thank you very much. And this is what I hear from everyone, that soft, ethical, legal aspects of cybersecurity, especially in connection with artificial intelligence, are becoming more prominent. We talked a lot about the techniques, both low tech and high tech, used by the attackers. What about the defenders? What about the new approaches that they use based on high tech, artificial intelligence, and low tech understanding of the attackers' processors approaches? What do you think about that, Raj? What are the trends for the defenders?
Well, I mean, look, first and foremost, we've been using AI within the information security industry for, for a long time. Excuse me. Because the way that we approached, endpoint protection initially began with signatures. We moved to heuristics. But of course, we knew that there were limitations within that. So the ability to be able to assert a specific likelihood of maliciousness within a specific artifact is something that we've been doing for a considerable period of time. So I don't think, well, actually, I would argue that when you think about the use of AI, and actually when you think of the use of any cutting edge technology, the information security industry has typically always been at the forefront of that, because we're dealing with competitors, aka organized crime and APT groups, that are incredibly well resourced. So I don't think there's anything net new with regards to that. What we're now having to contend and deal with is more data sets, more data streams. We're having to deal with the ability to be able to consolidate and collect data in an automated fashion and make those assertions on larger data sets. But the great opportunity now is we have the ability to be able to correlate and connect some of these disparate data sources in order to make a better assertion. The biggest challenge that we're always going to face, though, is how do we tune that and identify the crossover error rate with regards to making sure that we don't either overwhelm an organization with too many alerts that are amber or benign, or how do we create a scenario where we don't go too far the other way and we create kind of false negatives. And so I think the use of AI and the application of AI with regards to the detection of threats comes down to how we tune that and the transparency that we need to provide to organizations to be able to determine and identify the crossover error rate. At some point, I would like to respond to Giotin on the data governance thing, but I'll pause and let you ask more questions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Excellent answer. Thank you, Raj. And it is true that many agentic solutions within well-recognized cybersecurity platforms like CrowdStrike focus on what's the generic alerts that come to them and trying to resolve them independently, or at least establish how important they are. And that certainly means a lot. It does not resolve the issue that the defenders need to stand against, as you pointed out very correctly, very well resourced adversaries with excellent technologies at their disposal. But it is helpful. I think that would be an opportunity for you to comment a little on the governance, as you just suggested, Raj.
So maybe what I do is if I come back to the first point. So yes, we're dealing with more data sets, and there is now a question mark about, like to your point, is how does a defender begin to respond to these things? Well, one of the ways that we can do this is we can start to become and incorporate things like automation. But if we're going to start to do things like incorporate automation based upon threats that we determine to be actual and potentially impacting, then we've got to get higher fidelity and more context around what we do. And so I think that's the opportunity that we have, is we have the ability to be able to contextualize and then make decisions and then automate the response as a result. Because of course, if you think about like things like dwell time from when a threat actor breaks into an environment to when they deploy the final stage payload can be as little as 3 hours. We as defenders, we don't need to be right 100% of the time. Yes, it would be great if we identify and disrupt the initial stage payload, or sorry, the initial entry vector. But if we can identify the threat actor when they're traversing through the network, then we can disrupt the kill chain then. So what we need to be able to do is we need to ideally disrupt the kill chain before it gets the final stage payload. But we don't have to be, we have to accept that we're never going to be 100% right? So that, I think that's the first thing. I think, obviously, Jotin talks about things like DLP as a foundation for technology, but look, the premise for DLP is to be able to classify and identify the assets that you want to protect. And so I think it does, the foundation of DLP is things like data classification. So I think we're kind of broadly agreeing with one another, but I do think governance is the foundation for DLP.
Yeah, I agree also. Jotin, would you like to respond to this?
Yeah, I agree with Raj. So governance and data classification. So that's why I think from an enterprise perspective, it's important from a organization to have essentially a playbook as to where are your crown jewels. So you need to classify your data. You need to know where that high risk data sits. You need to know how it's being used. And then you need to develop capabilities around that for your business use cases so that you know that you have checks and balances there. You know that you're monitoring the identity and access of that data. You also know as to when somebody is, if there is a market volume increase on access to that or there are anomalies there. So absolutely, for all these technologies to work, you need to have good process. If the process is broken, the best technology in the world is not going to help because you just don't know how to use it. And you're not using it for the reasons that it's being built or on how it's being thought through. These are all engineering capabilities, and everything in engineering is a step-by-step process. If your overall model doesn't apply to how it was built and what you're trying to protect, then it's not going to work as well, and you're always going to lose out. So I think the overall perspective, going back to it, is that governance, understanding and developing policies and procedures, training your employees, increasing awareness, and definitely, we do a lot of phishing simulation, but just simulation in general on understanding what to do around incident response, continuity, and disaster recovery is equally as important as protecting and being a defender.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are approaching the end of our discussion. As the last question, I would like all of you to comment on whether the new trends, both in processes, types of attacks, threat agents, technologies, could be favorable or unfavorable for defenders in 2026. Ashish, would you like to start? The main trends and whether or not they will be favorable to the defenders.
Yeah, so In my opinion, the short answer is that it will be unfavorable and in 2026. The primary reason is that we are, is holistic security, and an intelligence-driven holistic security. One of the key tenets of my cybersecurity focus over last decade, 2 decades or so, has been that how do you achieve holistic security? It doesn't have to be foolproof, but finding the attackers want to find the weakest link in your attack surface, and how do you ensure that you make the job of the attacker harder, and that is where comes from the defender side, how you can use AI agents, LLMs, code generative LLMs, etc., to find this vulnerability, fix them, or even deploy decoys. And that is important. And how do you have data for that? So confirmation bias is going to be a problem for defenders because they can defend only what they know, but attackers are the ones who are innovators for identifying those weak links and exploiting them. Therefore, and that's easier sometimes with the advanced technology. That's why it will be more asymmetric. As I said in the beginning, there will be the attackers will gain more ground than the defenders. But we have to, that means that we have to be more cautious and start deploying advanced technology, not for just advanced crown jewels, but also for all of, for everything ground up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's going to be difficult next year for the defenders. We have a lot of work to do. And we have to understand the problems that are facing the defenders, considering the constantly growing attack surface and advanced tools better than we do now, as well as the risks associated with it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Geotin, what do you think? Are the trends favoring the defenders or not?
Well, I think I agree with Ashish. The trends do favor with the attackers as such, just because of the fact that they are very focused on finding the gaps or the risks. And the fact is that we are moving into a very automation-focused enterprise where you are trying to implement agentic AI, and then Gen AI is coming in. So automation of a lot of tasks. You're also looking at quantum, and so there's a overall risk around cryptography. People are moving to Web 3.0 on the internet side, on their websites. There's an implementation of blockchain. So there are lots of new innovations in technology which bring great solutions, great capabilities, but also bring a lot of risk in play because you're taking the human out of some parts of that automation chain, and those have to be protected. And so I think the attackers definitely will have a little bit of an advantage, not to say that we are not going to be developing good and innovative tools to protect the enterprise. But going back to what Rod said, a lot of this, because we've been dealing with machine learning and then that advent to AI, has been around in technology for a long time. It's a question of now the pace has increased. And so because there's adoption, and as that adoption accelerates, we just have a harder time keeping up with all those very well-equipped and funded attackers on the APT side and nation actors, criminal organizations. That's my perspective.
Thank you very much, Jyotin. So you agree that 2026 will be a difficult year for defenders despite the emergence of the new tools and favorable processes, simply because of the magnitude of the issue and the enormous attack surface. Thank you very much. Raj, you get to say the final word in this panel. What do you think?
Well, look, I'm going to try and be positive. We have, as an industry, we've been doing this longer as the cybersecurity industry. We've got incredible talent, incredible expertise, and incredible insight. The most important thing I would say for organizations is to consider this. Security, intelligence, and expertise is not a commodity, right? You go to places like these conferences and everyone says, oh, we're doing this in AI or this LLM and so on and so forth. Well, ask them how they train their models. When you go out and look at the detections of companies that you want to partner with, test their security efficacy, right? Don't just take their word for it. And that to me is the most important thing. There is incredible research development happening all across our industry. And I think maybe to Jotin's point earlier, billions and billions of events are being blocked every single day with high fidelity and high accuracy. The issue, and let's be brutally honest, the reason the majority of the times the criminals are successful is because the response is not commensurate with the particular context of the alert. So the issue is how do we contextualize the alert better so we can then frame the response to be more in line with the type of issue that we're dealing with. But yeah, most of these issues have been at least identified. The challenge is that the threat actor isn't being thrown out of the environment, so they stay in the environment for longer and longer. So yeah, let's be positive. It's nearly Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Raj. And I'm glad we closed this panel, the last of 2025, on a positive note. Yes, it will be a difficult year. Yes, there are enormous problems facing the cybersecurity community and cybersecurity defenders. But it is also true that we block billions of events every day. It's true that we have made incredible strides in terms of innovation, deployment of new technologies, understanding of processes, both high tech and low tech. We are on the right track. With that, I would like to conclude this panel. Jyotin, Ashish, Raj, thank you very much for joining us. I learned a lot from this discussion. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your thoughts with the synchronous and asynchronous audiences for this panel. And I wish you a wonderful holiday season and a great 2026. Thank you very much. With that, I turn it to our host, David Goodman.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you to the panelists. That was a great discussion. And likewise, I'm very grateful that we ended on a positive note. And the nights get longer, the idea of going into 2026 with not a bit of hope in our hearts with regard to cybersecurity would be upsetting, to say the very least. So thank you all, and thank you to Claire, and thank you, Claire, for moderating all the sessions this year. And I look forward to the series of panels next year and a bright future for cybersecurity professionals everywhere. Happy holidays, and thank you, and have a good day or good evening.